Good evening. I want to convene the regular meeting for December 18th of the Brattleboro Select Board. We know the meeting has been properly warned because we were here at 5:30. First up is to approve the minutes of the December 4th meeting. Would somebody like to make a motion to approve the minutes?
So moved.
We have a motion to approve the minutes of December 4th meeting. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Motion carries 4-0, and we have Randy, who is home sick tonight. So that's the reason there's only 4 of us. Chair's remarks. I actually have no remarks, I guess, except Happy New Year, because we won't see each other again until 2019. And does the town manager have any remarks?
I also have no remarks on the agenda tonight. Thank you.
No remarks. Does anyone in the select board have any comments or committee reports that they'd like to make?
A couple of real brief updates.
Yeah.
The Diverse Workforce Committee met a few weeks ago, and I didn't actually report on the meeting, but we're basically exploring colleges to visit and registering with online employment services that they have. And
David, would you mind speaking louder?
okay, sorry. That's usually not a problem. And the Compassion Committee is working on a series of activities. One is an arts, Compassion in the Arts program, and the other is a series of speakers at the library, which I mentioned before, and that is now scheduled for March and April. So I'll bring more information as we get there.
Great. Does anyone else have any comments or committee reports?
I don't, but I will remind the public that there's a traffic safety committee meeting coming up this Thursday at 8 a.m.
Right here.
We always welcome people coming to put their 2 cents in.
Great. Now it's time in the meeting for public participation, and this is the time where members of the public can make comments on anything that is not on tonight's agenda. So would anyone in the public like to make a comment this evening? Yes, come on up.
See if we can get her name this time.
Hello, my name is Nania, and I'm very sad to hear the update about Centoya Brown's case. She was trialed when she was 16, 10 years ago as an adult for murder, and she's really a rape survivor, and I want the Brattleboro community to prevent people from ever being treated like she is by enforcing a death penalty for rapists and to send the National Guard to evacuate her from the Tennessee prison, because for over 10 years there has not been any justice through the court systems against her and many people like her who we don't know their names. I don't know other people's names, but I know Centoya Brown's case. I'm also disappointed that there are not signs outside welcoming the public to come in to participate. There could be 2 out front, one by the drive and one closer to the sidewalk for pedestrians, and one in the back of the building too, to welcome people. I have a lot more I want to say, and I know I have 2 minutes, so I hope that the select board takes seriously more bike lanes and to address the dilapidating buildings on Canal Street, because there are people who really need help there, and the money exists for them, and I'm just very disappointed still in the money that was invested into the parking garage rather than into people who can't afford cars. I think people matter more than cars. That's all.
Thank you. Is there anyone else that would like to make a comment on something that is not on tonight's agenda? Come on up.
Peter Nickerson, Brattleboro Lake, 67 years in Old Dixie. I think I have found another reason to encourage the listener and the select board to, perhaps I should reverse that, the select board and the listener to consider legalizing all drugs. We agree about something. And I say this because we're on the edge of tremendous social unrest, and I think it's not only caused by an inflammatory president, whom I voted for, but wish he acted with more dignity as President of the United States. But we are also on the edge of increased automation because of artificial intelligence. When and if, probably when, truck drivers no longer have a job and being replaced by robots, we're going to have a serious problem in this country. People are not going to be able to pay their bills. There's talk about a guaranteed basic income. There's talk about federal subsidies for existing jobs. But there's talk about federal jobs. Whatever it is, I think we need to start trying it in test cities so we can see what works and what doesn't. And where would we get this money? We would get this money just the same place we got money when we re-legalized alcohol. We'd get the money from the citizen who wants to buy drugs. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any other comments from the public?
I'd like to add on to what he was saying, actually. There is an alternative currency that we can build using really like all modern pre-existing technology if we reframe it. And it can be called a credit currency, and it can help us release the seed from the federal government and not have to keep on lobbying to them because they're just taking away more funding for everything we need. And a public vote to switch over to a credit currency is totally a possibility we need to take seriously.
Great, thank you. Now we're going to move on to new business, and first up is errors and omissions to the grand list. And we have our town assessor here to fill us in.
Town Assessor. And I'm here, this is the time of year to present to the select board the errors and omissions from the assessor's office. The state mandates that we have this opportunity from the time of the grand list being lodged with the town clerk. This year, the grand list was lodged July 2nd, 2018, and between that date and today, there were 3 real estate changes that occurred. One was a BCA hearing, one was an error in a subdivision, and the third was the state method of valuation was not calculated, was not applied to a property that receives housing subsidy. There were 6 farm stabilization exemptions that had not been calculated appropriately, and we have 44 corrections for business personal property that are errors either because the business closed and they did not inform us in time, or there were late filings. And this is presented to the Select Board because the state requires that the Select Board sign off on this, and it becomes part of the grand list that is lodged with the town clerk.
And you had 914,599. That's the number you came up with. That's subtracted out of the grand list that you had on July 2nd. Correct.
And there should be a negative
Yep.
in your documents that I did not add in there.
That's okay.
It's negative 900.
At first I got excited, but then I realized
I'm
it's negative.
sorry.
And does anyone on the board have any questions or comments?
I did have a
Just-
question.
Go ahead.
Are you sure?
I went first last time.
And this is maybe just a rookie question. What's the thinking or the reasoning behind some of the revaluations or the differences in jump? Was it because there were changes made by the owners to the buildings, or or is it just because there was an actual error and there was a mistake that needed to be corrected? I just wanted to understand what some of the differences were.
Yep. So if we're talking about the real estate, the BCA was hearing with the Board of Civil Authority, so that's a decision that was made after the grand list was lodged. The subdivision, that was an error in the lister's office, or the assessor's office, excuse me. And the subsidized housing, we assessed the property appropriately, but there is a state method of assessing that has to take place instead of the assessor's assessment.
Because it's subsidized housing.
Because it's subsidized housing. And so this is state statute, and we have to go by what they say. That had been overlooked by me, and I caught it in time to rectify that for this grand list. And the farm stabilization, that's a calculation that's done, and I had missed a piece of that when doing the calculation, so those were caught in time to, again, be rectified for this grand list.
Does that help?
Yeah, no, that's more than helpful. Thank you.
Okay.
That clarifies.
I also had a question about the housing subsidy item. Is that, do we get like money from the state for the other 600,000 on that property, or we just get half of what we would normally get if it were a commercial, a typical residence or a commercial property or something?
For a payment
For the,
I don't believe
what
that
we would
there's...
bill for property tax?
No, I don't believe that there's a state payment.
We don't get compensated by the state.
So
For that.
the subsidized housing, we just, well, not lose, but we just don't collect as much as we would.
Right, it's
for other-
valued differently, and the
And that's
taxes
what-
on it are lower.
And that's what the state does. Yeah.
Yep.
Yes.
I know.
Sorry.
Thank you.
Again.
Does anyone else on the board have any questions or comments? Does anyone in the public have any questions or comments about the errors and omissions to the grand list? Seeing none, would someone like to make a motion?
I'll make a motion. I'll make a motion to approve changes in the 2018 grand list as set forth on the errors and omissions 2018 grand list report dated December 18th, 2018, from Town Assessor Jennifer Burnell.
We have a motion to approve the changes in the 2018 grand list. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Anyone opposed? Motion carries 4-0. Thank you.
Kate, I have one more thing, if I may.
Yes.
Just to go off script, I want to remind business owners that business licenses are due December 31st. And we've had a steady flow of business license coming into the office. If anyone has any questions, they can call the assessor's office or go online to brattleboro.org. And there will be a fee increase January 1st.
Good. That's a good reminder.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right.
Have a good
Thank
night. Next up is John O'Connor with the financial reports.
Thank you, Kate, and good evening, everyone. So included in your packet tonight, you have a copy of the audited financial statements and the single audit. And let me just briefly go over both of those items. So the financial statements and independent auditor's report, the auditor has issued an unmodified opinion, which is a good thing. And basically what it says is that we've presented all of the information in those 60 pages were presented fairly in all material respects. So that's a good statement. An unmodified opinion is a good thing. Just in general, I want to talk a little bit about the general fund, where we ended up. So we closed the year with a use of fund balance of $649,653, which is $450,322 better than what we had expected. We closed the year with a fund balance of $3,508,192, of which $2,077,299 was unassigned. And the $2,077,299 was $301,708 above our target of 10% of this year's expenditures. So we're proposing to use $295,000 of that $301,000 in the 2020 budget. So has everybody gone through the audit report? Do you have any questions?
Do you want to give us is there anything particular of note that we should know about? Yeah.
There is so much information there, Kate, I wouldn't know where to begin, to tell you the truth. I think the general fund is really where your focus is, and that's what I've just gone over.
Wait one sec. We got to
Is that information available online?
Absolutely.
Yes. I'm sorry about that.
Okay, so it sounds like there was an overall increase of money for the town from that?
That's what we're talking about right now.
Well, because it sounds like there's such a great increase, I'm hoping that that is reason to put towards that there shouldn't be a 1% tax increase for the town sales.
Okay.
Yes, Kate?
Yeah. So I lost my train of thought. Were you going to ask a question?
No, you had something.
I did, but now I can't remember what it was.
Okay, I'll ask my question then. It talks about the one, there was a however. I've never seen a however in one of the audits before that we've gotten. That the town's sub-recipient monitoring does not meet the standards required under uniform guidance compliance. And it mentions that monitoring practices, we developed a risk assessment tool, worksheets, and various things you did to fix that or compensate for that. Can you give me an example of a recipient that we monitor so I could?
Yep, I can give you Kids Place. Kids Place is a recipient of a grant that comes through the town, and we know very little about Kids Place's internal controls.
Right.
We do a lot of work with Wyndham Windsor Housing Trust, and we know what their internal controls are like. But Holton Home, Bradley House, Kids Place, those places are a little less known to us. And so we've increased our monitoring practices on those type of institutions.
And those are for when grants come through, not like the money in the budget for social services.
That's correct. These are grants that are
Thank
coming
you.
through.
Yeah, I just wanted to clarify that. Thank
Yeah,
you.
so let me talk a little bit about the single audit and what it is. The single audit is a is a list of all federal grants and expenditures against those grants, whether it's a direct grant from the federal government or whether it's a grant that comes through the state and then to the town. And so there were no material weaknesses identified in the audit. All of the figures were audited and came back fine. There were no adjustments at all made to either the financial statements or the single audit. And the only thing that was identified was our monitoring practices for some of these organizations that we really had no prior experience with and were unfamiliar with their internal controls.
Now,
Go ahead.
we might be saying the same thing.
Yeah.
We've been monitoring, we've been doing the same thing for a while, and nobody has questioned this before, correct? Is this just a new thing on their part?
Yeah, it is. I think it's a new thing, and we're starting to see, I mean, like I said, we have done a lot of work with Wyndham Windsor Housing Trust, and most of our grants are either direct grants to the town or grants that come through the town to them, but now we're seeing other grants that are coming through and going to different organizations. And we have always monitored Wyndham Windsor Housing Trust with CDBG and as a joint effort, and that's gone very well. We know a lot about that organization. The others, I think, were new, and we're just seeing more activity in those organizations.
Okay.
An additional clarification I'd like to offer is, and it goes right to the heart of what you were saying, Kate. So the agency that actually grants the money and then has enforcement power over these grants at the state, the Agency of Commerce and Community Development, they monitor us very closely, and they have found us to be in compliance with their requirements for the monitoring of subrecipients of these grants. In this case, what we have is auditors saying, even though what you're doing may meet the state standards, that a more robust level of oversight of these smaller organizations would be better in everybody's best interest. We agreed with that would be a better practice, steps. And that's why we've created the procedure to be responsive to that comment.
Great. All right. Does anyone else have any comments about both the auditor's report and single audit?
I have an observation, which is not, I don't think there's any answer to it, but in the last couple of years, the auditor has pointed out that the more than half of the property taxes collected go to the public schools. I think last year, it was 57%. I'd have to look it up, but it's significant. This year, it's 46%, and I'm curious as to how that, 2019, I'm curious as to how that happened. I didn't know that we went up or the towns went down, so I'm just curious about that. And I know
this for my own.
On page 9 in the first section, the independent report, right, the economic factors, next year's budget and rate.
Oh, thank you.
Oh, yeah, there it is, right there.
Yeah, it's there every year, and I always sort of say, I guess the observation would be if we ever have a chance to talk to the legislators, we might want to encourage them to take an action in the near future to change the way we fund education. If we have a chance to talk to them.
All right. So any other questions or comments from the select board? Anyone in the public would like to have any input on the report that John O'Connor just gave? Now, John, was there anything else you were going to talk about? Were you going to talk about the November?
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, so let me go over the November financial statements with you. So we're 41.7% of the way through the year as of the end of November. And general fund expenditures were at 45.7%, so we're a little above the 41.7 where we would have expected to be. But as you know, we do the prorations for the various one-time payments that we make during the year for lease and notes and human services and insurance, things of that nature. And once we make those prorations, the expenditures come down to 40.7%, so under the target. So we're in good shape. Utilities fund was at 43.3%. Parking was at 35.5%. And again, we had an encumbrance of $105,000 for sludge removal and $366,613 for bond interest in the utilities fund. And once we prorate those items, it brings the expenditures down to 38.8%. So again, under the 41.7% target. And then finally, we have our solid waste disposal fund. Revenues were at 37.9%. Expenditures were at 36.3%. And again, those figures don't include the November bag revenue, curbside collection, and tipping costs for November. The loan report shows that we had $4,390,300 in outstanding loans. 2 of the loans had payments that were overdue, and 2 loans are in default, but they are fully reserved. Program income shows that we have $518,686 in available funds for additional grants and loans as of the end of November. And then finally, the grant report gives you several pieces of information on 37 active grants and 8 grants that are in the application process. So if anybody has any questions on any of those reports, I'll certainly try to answer your questions.
Does anyone on the board have any questions for John?
I have a couple. I hate being the only one. I just wanted to look for confirmation that this increase in investment income on the town manager's line is one of the reaping of the benefits of our decision for a better way to invest town funds.
Until we spend them. Yeah.
Exactly.
Okay.
That's exactly right.
Good. Let's see, I had a question about the miscellaneous revenue of the police. I know that that's a line where sometimes that can be for extra services, the police.
This is actually, in this case, it's reimbursement. We had a police officer leave when they had not fulfilled their obligation. There's an agreement that the entering police officers signed with us because there's a substantial cost in bringing a police officer onto the department.
Okay.
So they sign an agreement saying that if they leave within the first 4 years, that they will reimburse a prorated portion of that, and so this is one of those reimbursements.
Am I remembering correctly that last month we had the same thing in the reverse?
No, you had the same thing in front of you. You asked the question. We didn't know the answer a month ago, so John did the research and we sent an email to advise of that. But that's
no. But I thought maybe last time it was in the negative with the same sort of. Okay.
Sorry, it was this one.
My mistake. Jumping to page. Sorry. Page 9. The building repairs on the municipal center being up quite a bit. I'm just curious what that was. It's like a third of the way down.
It's 12,000.
Yeah.
12,000, and that's, we're only, 41% into the year.
Yeah, that is up. I don't.
That's the construction of the walls around what will be the HR director's office in part of what used to be that large room in the planning department.
Yeah.
Okay.
So that's the majority of that expense. It's probably not all of that expense, but it's the majority of it.
And have we finished all the things the state required us to do a year
We've not.
ago?
We finished the 2 most urgent ones. So we did virtually right away. We got the agreement from the state that we could do it in 3 phases. So the first phase was to change out the fire alarm system because the fire alarm system is what saves human life. So that would alert people to the fact there's a fire and get people out of the building. The second phase was to change out the sprinkler system so that it met modern standards because that's what protects the contents of the building other than human life. The third is a more expensive and more complicated set of or pieces of work that would need to be done. related to the fact that we don't have doors at the top and bottom of the stairways,
Stairwells,
that there's some penetrations in the floors, going from one floor to another where wires used to go through, but now there aren't. So there's a hole in the floor, and that can allow fire to escape. So these are things that do need to be addressed. But since we have the new sprinkler system in and we have the new fire alarm system, we had postponed doing all the rest of that work while we were looking at the potential for a full renovation of this building. And something actually just within the last week, Patrick and I have talked about the fact that given that we weren't able to move forward on the faster pace that we had hoped for a renovation of the building, we ought to touch base back with the state and make sure that they are content to continue to have us wait on that third phase of work. If we need to proceed with it, then we will.
And we'll see some more expenditures in that line then.
Actually, that would be expended from capital. That's money that's already been authorized by the board and by town meeting and is waiting in capital. What we're hoping to do is to be able to not expend that money on temporary changes and then have to appropriate new capital money for a renovation, but instead be able to continue to hold on to that money to contribute towards a renovation.
Great, thank you.
But we'll check in with the state to make sure that's acceptable to them.
Great. Does anyone else on the board have any questions or comments?
And one last one.
Yeah.
Same page, easy to follow. Auxiliary staff for
Yeah.
the police department. Just want to make sure that wasn't a mistake. 'Cause that's
It's not a mistake. That is the contractual funding that was paid to the sheriff's office employee who, during the time when we had an investigation ongoing related to the shooting back in May that had 3 members of the department who were on leave for a period of time, we supplemented with a sheriff's department officer who was under contract to us and paid from that line item.
right.
That person actually, through mutual agreement of the officer and the sheriff's department and the police department, is now a Brattleboro police officer. He's filled one of our vacancies, and it was a really great thing to get an experienced officer who was, had worked together with our team and wanted to become a member of it.
So what happens? I mean, that's kind of puts that line out of whack. And where,
Yes.
Where typically does that get made up?
So this was an unusual circumstance. What we normally see, and we will see at the end of this year because there have been still several vacancies in the police officer positions, we'll see a staff salaries under expenditure and an overtime over expenditure. The net of the two will be a savings to the town. But in this particular year, while we were still paying salaries to the 3 officers who were on leave, we needed to supplement to have just more capacity on the street. And so that's an additional expense to the town this year.
Okay. I do see the right 2 lines above it, police outside overtime is quite low, so.
Outside overtime is the contracted overtime. You see almost none of it this year because that's when people at like a construction site or a, event bring on police officers essentially to function as security officers.
Sure.
We do almost none of that anymore because of the fact that we've got we were operating at pretty far below 27 officers for a while. We're now up to 25 officers, so we have more capacity to do that sort of assignment if the officers wish to do it.
Okay. I was just noting that was budgeted much higher than we needed, so that kind of acts as a buffer in this case.
There is a buffer there, and then the overtime item that is the offset to the salary savings is immediately above that, and you can see we've already expended 63% of that budget. 41% of the way through the year because that's where we carry the load when we're understaffed.
Okay, thank you.
Makes sense. Does anyone in the public have any questions or comments? Yes.
So I heard that the town is $4 million in debt with loans.
No,
I misheard?
no, those are loans that the town has made.
Oh, given to other people?
Yes.
Okay. But, and so when you said that there were late payments, are those from local residents, not from the town owing payments?
They're from a local business.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks. Anyone else have any questions or comments? All right, seeing none. Thank you, John.
All right, Kate?
Appreciate your,
Happy holidays, everyone.
yeah, you too. We say see you next year. Next up is our discussion on the FY20 budget, and we're going to just see where we are and what we want to do. And we have a nice memo.
Shall I summarize it?
Yes, would you like to summarize it?
Sure. So the board has met 6 times to review the various aspects of the proposed budget. You've now been through the entire proposed budget, looked at a couple of pieces of it a couple of times, but been one time all the way through, and have decided to make certain changes in the course of that first review. I'll summarize this very quickly, that you have approved the rental housing inspection program that we proposed. That'll involve additional overtime for the inspectors in the fire department, offset by fees that will be charged to owners of rental housing units, landlords. And so that there'll be a revenue and an expenditure that'll offset in the budget as it has been modified by the board when you send it on to the representative town meeting. We, the staff, have increased the transfer from the utilities fund to the general fund from $275,000 to $290,000. That's just the result of applying the same formula this year as in prior years, but because of additional expenses, it resulted in an additional transfer. And so that was something that we had not noted earlier in the process. John noted that as we were actually preparing this summary of where we are. Called that to my attention. We thought that we ought to go ahead and make the change and bring it to your attention because it does provide $15,000 of additional non-tax revenue into the general fund budget. Takes a little bit of pressure off, one-tenth of a penny off of the tax rate. Expenditures other than the rental housing inspection overtime that have been modified during the select board's review is adding $5,000 for BCTV funding, subtracting $10,000 for the climate protection funding. You didn't strike that outright. What you did was took the funding for it out and made that a question that you will propose to the representative town meeting. On the warning, and then the DBA had requested an increase in funding from $78,000 to $80,000, and so that has also been modified to reflect the fact that you tentatively approved their program. The net change is a reduction of $26,250 in the overall expenditures and revenues of the general fund, and so the expected, if you were to adopt the budget in this form, and subject to the separate decision that representative town meeting would make regarding the climate protection funding, regarding the 1% local option and other matters, the budget that you would send forward for consideration at representative town meeting would include a 2.7% increase in property taxes or a 3.46 cents increase in property taxes. At this point, I've also itemized on the second page of this memorandum the 5 things that you've decided to put on the warning for consideration at representative town meeting. So those are the 1% local option sales tax, the visiting nurse and hospice request for funding of $12,200, Kids Place request for funding of $4,000, the climate protection $10,000. And although this would not have a general fund impact, it would come from program income, there is an RTM warning item that you've approved, or you've indicated that you want on the warning to fund CEVEDs at $25,000, which is approximately $2 per resident of Brattleboro. I've noted also here, we'll have more detailed information for you at the January 8th Select Board meeting. But we talked earlier this year about the fact that there is some finish-up business that needs to be done related to the police fire facilities and the police fire bond. So we'll have that additional information regarding the 3 pending items, which are the potential carport for the police, the additional roof work that needs to be done at the police department, and the piece of equipment that's related to the alarm system in the fire department, actually to serve the fire department, but it would be housed in the dispatch center. We'll have all that detailed information for you to consider putting on a warning item regarding the closeout of the bonds for the project. And then there's the proposed schedule of meetings. At this point, subject to decisions you may make tonight regarding any unfinished business, you don't have any explicitly identified matters of unfinished business related to this particular budget. So often at this particular moment, we identify specific topics for specific nights in January. The question before you for tonight is, do you have any such topics that you'd like to schedule for January consideration? We will have budget consideration on January 8th because we will have that closeout of the police fire matter. But if there's anything else that you either need some more information from staff or you want to have some more discussion among yourselves on, we should identify those tonight and schedule them for January.
When is the day that we're voting on the, are we proposing the January
For the warning?
22nd meeting? Yeah, or the budget?
No, so the reason this goes through January 22nd is you need to finish your budget work by then at the latest,
Yep.
so that approximately a week later, you haven't actually scheduled a meeting at
Yep.
this time for the warning, but it'll be around the 29th or 30th of January.
Okay. Because the reason I ask, I just wanted us to all have an idea what we're doing. And also, I mean, I think one of the things, obviously, we're going to need the budget with all this stuff in it so we can
Yes.
see it in its totality.
Exactly.
Because that'll inform us. And I also think we need the numbers on what's this going to mean to homeowners. You know, how much
Sure.
per hundred the stuff goes up.
And if you don't identify any additional specific topics that you need additional information on, the bond discussion that you'll have on the 8th is unrelated to the general fund
Right.
budget.
Right.
So if you are in a place where you're ready to see that updated, complete budget, we could bring that to you for consideration on the 8th as well, if you'd like.
Well, yeah, what I'm thinking is if we could see it, because when you see it,
Right.
we may think of something.
Sure.
Do you see what I mean?
Sure.
It's nice to look at it and then decide, do we have all the information we need?
I understand.
You see what I mean?
So what you have right now is the two separate pieces of the complete proposed budget and then the list of modifications. We'd be
Right.
happy to incorporate these modifications, bring you a complete updated budget,
Right.
and the table that you were describing about what the impact is for per 100,000 of value
Right.
for homeowners,
Right.
and have you be able to consider that on the 8th. That would be good.
What does everybody else think? Anyone else have any thoughts?
I would love to see that. That's great. My question is, how complicated will it be because we have these items that are going to be up to town meeting to approve or disapprove, and one of them especially is a major impact. So can that be reflected on that level as well, is my question. So that's,
Any potential, like this is if this passes and this is if this
yeah,
doesn't
but I don't know how far into the weeds we want to get because there's a bunch of items. But the major item, obviously, that people are going to be interested in is if the 1% local option sales tax, that radically alters the impact to our homeowners, to our property taxpayers. So I'm just wondering if that can be included or noted at the end or whatever as in the document.
Yeah, I would think, what I'm thinking is on the table that we get, here's what it is, the way it is. If the 1% sales tax passes, that's $600,000 off, that's 4% reduction in the budget. So here's what the taxes would be under that scenario.
We could show that both ways.
Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah.
I-
On a different page, though, so it's not too confusing.
Yeah. No.
Or somehow so it's not confusing.
And didn't last year when we had the snow plow and the skate
Yes.
park, it wasn't factored in the big budget.
Correct.
But it was a sheet that explained to people if we support.
This'll happen,
This'll
yeah.
happen.
Yeah.
If you vote in this thing, that'll happen.
So
Vote
that
this thing,
is,
that'll happen.
basically, if you look on page 2 of the memo for this meeting,
Yeah.
where there's the parenthetical after each one that says how it would either increase or decrease taxes.
Yeah.
That's the list you're referring to
That's
that we
exactly
did
what
last
I'm
year.
referring to.
The one thing we did with it last year, because it was several larger dollar amount items, is we also described not just the dollar amount impact, but the sense of property taxes impact.
Yeah, exactly.
Because in the case, for instance, of the sidewalk plow, it was actually more than an additional penny. It was 1.2 cents. So I think actually from the combination of comments you've made tonight, the clearest way to understand this for this go round would be not to put $4,000 or $12,000 into penny terms because it's so small, but to do exactly what you said a minute ago, where there would be that summary sheet of the impact of taxpayers if you proceed in the manner that you made actual changes to the budget. And then if town meeting were to approve the 1% local option sales tax, what that page would look like under those circumstances.
Great.
You'd have it both ways.
Does that make sense?
I think so.
And then we can figure out, it's good to see it. In its
To get a
totality.
sense what the town is going to see.
Yeah.
I am going to want to, and clearly not for this fiscal year budget, but I am going to be interested in revisiting on what is a way to operationalize or get feedback from town residents about item removal, because it keeps coming up. And
About what?
item removal, like bulky items
Oh.
removal, and what's a way, like, is there research that I should do and then come back and think about or present that maybe for the following fiscal year to think about adjusting pay-as-you-throw so that you have that and I know it won't be triple T given the research that was done, but so that we can think about adding that service that is provided. But I'm still interested in exploring that for people because it is a burden if you do not have a way to get rid of the stuff. It's a burden for people. But I obviously know that that's after all of this.
That can be added to that can be the first thing, Shanta, on next year's list.
Yeah, I know.
Keep making
We
lists.
have a list of things we want to get public comment on,
Yeah.
public outreach.
And that might have to be after March.
Could be after. We'll see what happens.
Yeah.
So that might mean, never mind.
And actually, the sustainability
That's another one.
position is already on
On the list.
that kind of a list
Yeah,
for some
okay.
additional review in the months ahead that
Cool.
might be considered in the next year's budget cycle.
Great.
Yeah. So do we feel comfortable right now on the plan for the January 8th meeting? Like to have sort of
I think so.
a clean
Yep.
version of this?
Yeah.
Okay. Does anyone in the public have any questions? Yes.
So I heard Peter say some acronyms that I would like clarification about what the DBA and RTM are that
Sure.
there's going to be more money put towards.
Yeah, so RTM is all throughout this because that's representative town meeting, and so it's talking about the different things that have been decided by the select board, but will have to ultimately be decided by the representative town meeting for final decisions. And then DBA is the Downtown Brattleboro Alliance, which is the organization that is the basically the downtown merchants and property owners, the organization that does different services and activities in the downtown area.
And with the property tax increase, is there a consideration to just tax property owners that are significantly above poverty level? Because there is a risk of taxing people at poverty level who are homeowners not being able to afford it and then becoming
The
homeless.
state actually has a program called income sensitivity where there is, I don't know the exact limits of it, but it's pretty substantial consideration for, depending on the household income, up to a certain level, you can actually be exempt from paying property taxes.
What's that level?
I believe it's around $50,000 of annual
Okay.
income. I'm not certain. And then up to a higher level, which I believe is around $100,000.
So,
But again, I'm not
I
certain.
think it's 125 now. It's
125
higher
now.
yeah.
And so in between the 50 and the 125, there are partial tax relief that's provided, all in accordance with the rules and formulas of the state of Vermont. We don't control that, but it does address exactly the concern you just expressed.
But that's only for the education tax. It's not for the municipal tax. We are not income sensitized.
Right.
Why not?
It's because the state decided to do it that way.
Right.
So why is the town not deciding to have an adjusting tax?
We can only do what the state allows us to do, and they don't allow us to do it.
You're
It's
saying
really
that the
that simple.
state allows state taxes to be adjustable, but doesn't allow towns to have adjustable
Right.
taxes?
The state actually directs that, not just allows it, but directs that apply to the education taxes and doesn't apply that same thing. It's the state that runs the program. So it's not anything that we either decide or even administer. It's run by the state.
You're saying that the state runs the property tax increase that the town is voting on?
Nope, the state runs the income sensitivity program that protects lower income residents from the impacts of property tax increases.
Okay, so it's protecting the townspeople from any increase in town taxes on property.
No,
Moderates.
not any.
It moderates it.
Right,
It doesn't.
Makes it less.
Okay,
right.
Yeah.
okay, thank you.
Right.
It's confusing.
Yes, it is.
Very. Anyone else have any comments? Yes.
Franz Reichman from the Finance Committee. When can others get a hold of these new adjusted documents that you're preparing for January 8th?
Hopefully you'll have them when we have them.
Yeah, you'll definitely have them when the select board gets them.
Yeah.
The first week of January. We may be able to make those adjustments this week and post the budget to the website by Friday. I'm not sure we'll get that done.
But it will be, the
It'll
changes
definitely
will be
be out there the
posted.
first week of January. By Friday the 4th at the latest.
And including the adjustment for the potential 1% sales tax.
So that's going to be that'll be out on the 4th. That's going to not be part of the budget because
Right.
that change actually hasn't been made in the budget.
Right.
But it'll be in the documents that accompany the budget when it comes back for board consideration on the 8th. There'll be some summary. There'll be a memo on top of it. There'll be some exhibits with it, and among those exhibits will be what the taxation would look like if the 1% local option is adopted.
And it'll be on the town
And
website.
it'll be on the town's website by Friday afternoon, the 4th.
Thank you.
Does that
Yes,
make
sir.
sense? Good. Anyone else have any comments about our proposal? Yeah.
Can I do you usually have this line whenever the DBA comes up, and
Oh, yeah.
thanks to you to bringing it up.
I usually say it. You're right.
That it doesn't actually affect the taxpayer's bottom line because it's a pass-through. It's something that we collect on behalf of the downtown merchants. So they are literally funding with their own extra little tax
Yeah.
on top of the taxes they pay this amount. So it's correct.
Yeah, it's a special assessment on the property owners.
Yeah, and they've
So
asked
it's
us.
just for their zone.
We have to approve it, but and so we charge them and we collect it, but then it goes back to them.
Yeah.
It's just the way the downtown district is set up. So it doesn't affect, the bottom line is it doesn't affect property tax owners for us to have increased from $78,000 in FY19 to $80,000 in FY20, the DBA increase that you see.
Yeah. And again, that's a state program too.
Right. And even the 78,000 baseline is not paid by the broader tax base of the town. It's paid just by the folks within the downtown district.
And I do have just a follow-up question from that, because online I was actually explaining that very same thing that I tried to explain clearly, and I'm sure I messed it up just now. But what I was saying was that that's how it works, the pass-through. But then when I was looking at the budget, I couldn't quite figure out why.
Because it's embedded in the property tax line of the budget. But when we come and we ask you to approve a property tax rate in the first week in July, that calculation is shown there so that you can see the portion of the property taxes that are coming from the district and the portion of the property taxes that are coming from the broad base.
Okay. I think I was about to say, though, that It's okay. That it shows up as expense
Yes.
on the revenue side, on the operating budget.
Yes.
But not as revenue.
It actually, it doesn't show as a separate line of revenue. That's the thing I was just trying to say. So it is embedded within the property tax number that's in the budget. The calculation that
it.
we've run of the impact to the broad array of property taxpayers separates out that $80,000.
So if
That
people
makes
went
sense.
in and did the math, it would be there. But is there a way to actually have it
Sure, we
there
could,
so that we can
create a
always-
separate line item
Because
to show it.
this person was pointing out it's very odd that I see it as an expenditure,
Sure.
but I don't see it as a line
That's fair.
for revenue.
Yep.
So, and I thought that was fair criticism. So
We could do that.
it's just
Good point.
because then it makes it a little more obvious that it's coming in and then it's going out again.
Yeah.
Right.
Any other questions or comments regarding the budget?
I just have a comment on the scheduling. I don't know.
Oh,
if
yeah.
that's-
Go for it. I just lost that page. Because we were talking about this earlier and we were confused. Tim and I were confused.
Well,
But now,
what happened with my schedule, and this is self-centered because I have a conflict now, because I thought that, so we have our first meeting, we do first and third Tuesdays in every month. So the first is obviously New Year's Day.
Right.
So I thought that we were shifting to a regular meeting on the 8th, and then naturally we'd have our next regular meeting on the 22nd to be a 2-week span.
Okay.
But what we're actually doing is having a special meeting on the 8th, and then deciding to possibly cancel the first altogether, and then just have our second meeting on the 15th. I'm just wondering if people are open to the idea of just whatever, moving so that we space out our meetings better for whatever might happen in between. Does it make any sense to
What are
do
you-
the 8th special meeting, and instead of doing the 15th, to do the 22nd?
Do not have a meeting on the 15th? Because that is our regularly scheduled meeting, and anything that's not the first or the third is a special meeting.
Correct.
But if
So
you all,
if you feel like it's too disruptive to the public when they're counting on first and third to do that, but I was just advocating for, since it's already disruptive because of the lack of the first, that maybe people wanted to move the meeting.
I would be open to that only because I have a low residency program and I've got to let everybody know my schedule. I'm going to be up north for 10 days.
On the
block
15th.
time.
So on the 15th?
I'm going to be,
You're
I'll
gonna be-
do this offline, but I'll let you guys all know.
Oh, okay.
I'll be back on January, obviously January 15th, but I'm open to your suggestion.
so what was the suggestion now? Like keeping the 8th, but not doing the 15th? Got it?
Oh, I don't want to move the
8th and 22nd instead of 8th and 15th, with the 22nd as a maybe.
And I feel, if it's just for me, I don't think it's that big of a deal. But I was throwing it out there that if there were any other members, we don't know about Brandy, but if there was one other person that said, oh, I also can't do the 15th.
That's good spacing, though. I would be on board with that.
Well, we still may have to meet on the 20.
Yeah, we can't just have one meeting in January.
No, he's proposing the 8th and the 22nd.
Right, okay. I just thought I heard don't do the 22nd. I was confused.
No, but I thought I heard that we may have to add even the 29th. if
Yeah.
something-
We will definitely have to have a meeting in that, somewhere between the 29th and the 1st, maybe 2nd, because of the back timing under the state statutes for when the warning has to be approved. So somewhere in that 3 or 4 days.
Usually a very quick.
It
You
is a
mean
very
January
quick meeting,
20
yeah.
you mean
So
January 29th.
between the 29th and the 1st, right, January 29th and February
Okay.
1st, one of those evenings we need to get together.
So just throwing that out there. Maybe we don't have to decide tonight. I don't. Maybe we do.
It would be better, if you're going to cancel the January 15th meeting, it would be better for you to express your intention of doing that. Although, without Brandy present, you might want to say that's your intent, subject to confirming with her that it works. I don't know. It's up to the
Right.
board.
Right, why don't we just check with her and then we can get back with each other? Because we know we're definitely doing it on the 8th.
Yeah, it won't be until January 8th that you'd be able to announce what's happening with the 15th
Right.
and the 22nd. So
Right.
it would be good, I think, if you could make a tentative decision on that. And then, it's not something you vote on, and so
Right.
I think procedurally it would be fine for you to express your intent.
Yeah.
We can confirm with Brandy, and then if she agrees,
Right,
then
we
we
can
could alert the public to
That's
the
right.
change of schedule.
So it would be, we would cancel the 1st and the 15th and schedule the 8th and the 22nd.
That's the proposal.
Yeah.
Well, why don't we just say we'll do that, and if we have to meet the 22nd or the 15th, we'll
Right.
Put it
Because if
back.
something comes up that we have to do the 15th.
Yep. Okay.
I just save all the Tuesdays, show up. Hopefully everybody's here.
Okay.
That's what we've been doing for the last 2 months, is saving all of
It
the
gets to be a habit.
Okay. All right.
Thank you.
Next up is contract amendment for the Whetstone Brook hydrology analysis.
So this is a request to extend an agreement that we already have with Du Bois and King to do work of this nature related to the master plan that's being created for Tri-Park. But where there's some hydrologic and hydraulic modeling that needs to be done to fill in a gap in our data related to the Whetstone Brook out in that part of town. It would be done under the contract that's for the Tri-Park master plan because it will directly benefit that project and because that's where we have Du Bois and King already under contract. But the results of this work would also benefit areas downstream, particularly that commercial area where we've had quite a lot of interest in people wanting to redevelop properties that are between Mountain Home Trailer Park and getting down towards the Brattleboro Housing Partnerships housing. There's about a mile or so there, there's been some challenges to those properties getting redeveloped because of the floodproofing that would be required.
Get flooded.
With the new, yes, severely, some of them. With the new data, the much more precise calculations that they can do using the new form of measurement, they actually can get, the memo from Sue explains, it can get within the 1 foot contour. So basically, they can calculate the expected flood impacts to an accuracy of within 1 foot rather than within 20 feet. And that much more precise information, we believe, would have a positive impact on the potential for redevelopment of those properties. So for those two reasons, we think this is very beneficial for a relatively small amount of money. We recommend that the board authorize us to enter into this contract extension with Du Bois and King.
Does anyone have any questions?
And this comes from planning services.
It does, from the contracted services account line within planning services.
Any questions, comments?
Seems wise
Anyone?
to me.
No one? Okay. Would someone want to make a motion?
I'd like to make a motion. I'd like to make a motion to authorize Town Manager Elwell to modify a contract with Du Bois and King in an amount not to exceed $15,000 for additional hydrologic and hydraulic modeling in conjunction with Tri-Park Housing Cooperative Master Plan.
We have a motion to authorize the town manager to modify a contract with Du Bois and King for additional hydraulic and hydrologic modeling in conjunction with Tri-Park. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Anyone opposed? Motion carries 4-0. Next up is the closeout for the Community Development Block Grant for Bradley House. This started back in 2016 when Bradley House received a CDBG grant, and they are ready to close it out, so we have to hold a public hearing. And I know there are people from Bradley House are here. If you want to come up and be heard, and if you want to sit down, if you'd like to come up and get comfy. What I want to do is
We have 3 chairs.
Yeah, what I want to do is open the public hearing and invite the people from Bradley House, if you want to give us an update.
Okay.
Let us know what's happened.
My name is Lee Madden. I've been a board member and treasurer of Garden Path Elder Living and Holton Home for some years, but last month I stepped down from the board to serve as business manager. With me tonight is Deborah Abel, who is the site director for Bradley House. Our executive director, Bonnie McKellar, is out of town and not returning until tomorrow. Garden Path Elder Living is the parent nonprofit that owns and manages Bradley House and Holton Home. Both houses are level 3 residential care homes. This means that our residents are independent but may require some assistance with activities of daily living. We have RNs in each home, registered nurses. Between the two homes, we have rooms for 71 residents. I believe you have a letter that I sent 2 weeks ago explaining how the funds received from the town and with the town's assistance have been applied in our $5 million project, which is just now completing. To briefly review, though, our two-phase project was to add a new wing with new resident rooms and to thoroughly renovate the grand Bradley Mansion house. This meant to make all the rooms properly accessible by current standards and to meet very high energy efficiency standards while keeping all of the historic exterior architecture and keeping significant portions of the classic interior architecture. We are tremendously grateful for the strong support and assistance from the town. Without the town's input, our project would have been substantially lessened and perhaps could not have been done at all. We invite you all and the public to visit both facilities and to see what a great resource we have in town for elder care, as well as to see what handsome buildings and lively environments we have. And we are happy to answer any questions if we can.
Does anyone on the board have any questions or comments about the project? The grant has already been accepted. The granted money has already been spent. So
I walk by fairly frequently, and I think it looks great, and I want to come visit. So
You should.
check it out.
can we book our rooms already?
You can get on the waiting list.
I will just add, though, that what John O'Connor said earlier, he mentioned in passing oversight of grants like this, and as it happens, because a part of the grant, a different grant that we got, we need to do annual audits of both houses, and so we will be doing that starting this year, and that's open, of course, to you all and anybody for that matter.
Thank you.
Does anyone in the public have any comments during this public hearing? Seeing none, we'll close a public hearing. And thank you for everything you folks do.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks for coming and being here.
Thank you. Now we have, we're being asked to approve a grant application for a dry hydrant.
This is to be constructed at a private property out on Bonnievale Road where a pond is going to be constructed this coming summer. And the residents there have worked together with the fire department to plan to have a dry hydrant installed at the pond location so that it'll be a place where the fire department can draw water from for fires up in that part of town, increasing the fire protection for the whole area beyond what we have currently up on Bonnievale Road. So we recommend that the grant is for $5,000, and it will be to pay for the actual hydrant piece of equipment itself. And so we recommend your approval.
This is a grant to the Vermont Rural Fire Protection Task Force
It is
program.
indeed. Yep. They would be the ones sending us the money.
All right. Does anyone on the board have any questions?
What's a dry hydrant?
Dry hydrant is one that's not under pressure from
Okay.
the water system in town. So the hydrants that you see that are connected to our public water supply are under the same pressure as like your faucet at your house, but out when they're in one of these in a pond that's dry.
Not a
Until it's
great
needed.
Not a great name.
No, it isn't.
Yeah, I know. No, it makes sense though. It makes sound sense that they should have something in that part of town.
Yeah. All right. Would anyone like to make a motion?
Seeing David's gone, I'll make a motion to approve the Rural Fire Protection Program grant application in the amount of $5,000 from the Vermont Rural Fire Protection Task Force.
We have a motion to approve the Rural Fire Protection Program grant application. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Motion carries 3-0. Another grant application is for the Interlibrary Loan Courier Grant.
This is indeed that from the Vermont Department of Libraries. It's a grant in the amount of $292.50, which the town has received notice of award. I'm not going to be able to continue to fill the time until you have a third person to vote on it, because that's about what there is to say on this. So this is for courier services that are involved in moving the books around through the Interlibrary Loan Program. And so we would be receiving $292.50 to help offset those costs.
So what questions do we have?
I just want to give you an aside. Did you hear me laugh when I said rural? I always had trouble with that word.
Rural? Yeah.
Rural. Is that right?
Rural.
Rural. When you say it a few times, it becomes really hard to say.
Yeah.
And I thought when I heard you say it that you also were getting infected by
Yeah,
my...
probably now I'm going to, forever.
For the benefit of the public, we should mention that
we're
we're
waiting-
just awaiting
oh.
a third member, and a third member is entering the room
Yes.
as we speak.
So would someone
we'll now
like-
be able to take this action.
Would someone like to make a motion to accept and appropriate the Interlibrary Loan Courier System Grant in the amount of $292.50 from the Vermont Department of Libraries?
I will do that.
You want to just say so moved?
No, I want to read
Here
it.
you are. I read it all, so I could just...
Oh, I walked all the way back here. I move that we accept and appropriate the Interlibrary Loan Courier System Grant in the amount of $292.50 from the Vermont Department of Libraries.
All right, I won't read it again. All those in favor of that motion, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Anyone opposed? Motion carries 3-0. Next up, we have another grant to accept and appropriate, and that is the Downtown Design Plan.
Correct.
Grant.
This would be through the Municipal Planning Grant Program administered by the Vermont Department of Housing and Community Development. We've received notice of an award of $22,000 in response to our application for those funds. As you said, to assist in the development of a downtown design plan.
Just a quick question. I can't recall the details of the design plan. What is it that's going to be designed?
So it was first envisioned as it was to be called a downtown master plan. There's it will include some design aspects where it'll actually encourage certain designs and discourage other kinds of designs, and so it's a design plan. Sue may still be in the building if you need a more detailed explanation than that, but there's a reason why in the initial planning portion, this is all in follow-up to the town plan item that you recall a year ago we did the parking study in order to collect data and sort of be the first step towards doing what we called at that time the downtown master plan. This is that next step, but it is now being called the Downtown Design Plan because of the slight change in the intention of what the Planning Commission has authorized for that body of work.
And it has no connection with the people that came a few years ago and went around and looked at the whole town and did a whole presentation, and we're going to come back and...
No, don't even get me started on that. No.
That's over.
This has something totally... You don't even want to...
Okay, well...
Separate.
It's
Hopefully
separate.
this will be different.
Better, yes.
than
This is
that.
totally different.
Look, I have a quick question too, because maybe I'm being dense. Design plan, you're not talking about anything that would involve artists.
No.
Okay, you're talking about
Although-
architectural design?
Patrick may be able to speak to this in a way that I'm not able to. What I would say is,
Just curious.
Look at his face.
Don't put me in this.
the Planning Commission's shift to this form of a downtown master plan is intended to have aesthetic impact, not just functional impact. But it would be a stretch to call it being about artists as opposed to incorporating aesthetic consideration into the downtown master plan.
Let me rephrase my question then. I guess, is there any potential as they move along, or will there be space, especially if we're talking about aesthetics, to include and engage artists in the area? Or is it not that? Maybe I don't understand what the plan
So
is. Maybe
the-
I need to revisit what it is.
Yeah, it's a planning effort about like the functions and appearance of downtown.
Oh, then that possibly could potentially work across sectors and include.
It will actually.
Artists.
I don't know of any specific intent to reach out to artists as a separate entity.
Mm-hmm.
What I know is that this process includes a substantial amount of public engagement.
Okay.
There will be
That's
public
all
meetings
perfect.
and discussion of what ought to be in it, and then some public meetings to review what actually is in it.
Well, no, that's good. I just wanted
We
to
can
make
use
sure
those
that
public
there'd be some
meetings,
input and maybe like
Sure.
if there's design and aesthetic involved,
Sure.
that then there would be a potential for community building and,
Absolutely.
yeah.
Yep.
Cool.
I
Great.
wonder if it might be sometime after budget time and early in an agenda, so she doesn't have to sit here all night. Ask you to come and sort of flesh it out a little bit
Sure.
for us, just to sort of refresh our.
An update on the
Yeah, well, just because we've started talking about housing and.
February. You'd like that on one of the February agendas?
Or maybe after town meeting.
After town meeting.
Yeah, just to, we need to pack it in.
Sure.
Yeah, just to get a sense that.
If I'm not wrong about this, this is the perfect time for the public to get involved in an issue like wanting to see more bike lanes, more openness to the river,
It's a
for
really good
instance,
idea.
and
Yeah.
what are our priorities in town, like,
Waterfront housing.
you know, parking versus walkways.
Yes.
Yeah.
You know, so that's a good time to get involved, and that's why we'll try to.
Hopefully, that's part of what, so we can
Yeah.
find out.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
And
great.
that's what
So
I'm
we'll
sure
try
it's
to let
always
everybody know
not
when
like
that's
that.
happening, because that's part
Yeah.
of the
And it's
shaping of the town.
It's overseen by the planning commission, so they will also be regularly considering it at their public meetings, but there will also be a variety of special meetings around this process. And we'll put it on an April agenda for you to get a full update from Sue.
Thank you.
Cool. Thank you.
Would anyone like to make a motion so we can accept and appropriate the grant?
I'll do another one. To accept and appropriate a municipal planning grant in the amount of $22,000 from the Vermont Department of Housing and Community Development Program for a downtown design plan.
We have a motion to accept and appropriate a municipal planning grant for a downtown design plan. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Motion carries 4-0. Next up is to accept and appropriate a grant from the Governor's Highway Safety Program.
Yes, it's for $31,850. It's for supplemental traffic enforcement for occupant protection and impaired driving and law enforcement support equipment. There's a memorandum in the backup materials for this evening from Captain Kerrigan at the Police Department that explains that in order to increase the flexibility of how these different aspects of this grant are administered, this year, instead of it coming directly from the state to the different local law enforcement agencies, for Windham County, it's coming through the Windham County Sheriff's Department. So the town is actually a sub-grantee in this case. The Highway Safety Program is granting a larger body of funds to the Sheriff's Department, and then the Sheriff's Department is granting $31,850 of that to the Brattleboro Police Department.
So we've gotten this before.
We have gotten this
hasn't come to the
annually,
Sheriff's
but it has traditionally come directly from the state rather than through the sheriff.
Great.
And we actually liked this arrangement better.
Oh, good. Does anyone have any comments or questions? Anyone have any comments or questions? Seeing none, would someone like to make a motion?
I'd like to make a motion to accept and appropriate a Governor's Highway Safety Grant in the amount of $31,850 from Windham County Sheriff's Department.
We have a motion to accept and appropriate a Governor's Highway Safety Grant. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Motion carries 4-0. Our last item is to cancel the regular meeting on January 1st. I think we just already went through all of that. So would anyone like to make a motion to adjourn?
I'd like to make a motion to adjourn.
We have a motion to adjourn. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Motion carries 4-0, and we will be back on January 8th. Correct. So Happy New Year to everybody.
Yay. And where can I put my binders?
Oh, David, I need to tell you something.
I'm leaving them both
You want to
here.
store them here again?
Well, yeah,
Take-
well,
take
I
them.
can't take this with me, and I
Yeah.
don't want it to. I have
That's
more
fine.
space at my
We'll
house.
put it right back.